Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal here with you after every single Stanley Cup Final game, which means that we will be with you for at least one more because the Edmonton Oilers destroyed the Florida Panthers in Game 4 in front of their hometown Edmonton crowd by a final score of 8-1. We were writing eulogies, Greg Wyshynski. Media members were not booking flights back to Fort Lauderdale, and now all of a sudden, everyone is scrambling. How did the Edmonton Oilers suddenly wake up and after 3 straight games of getting beaten by the Panthers, destroy them to this degree?
Well, I got to give the Oilers credit. I mean, the last 2 days before this game have been spent with them saying that we believe that this series is a lot closer than people are giving it credit for, that we believe that, in the words of Connor Brown before Game 4, that we've had the better of play. And, one of the cliches they've always said is that all the mistakes the Oilers were making were ending up in the back of their net, and none of the mistakes the Panthers were making were ending up in the back of their net. Well, guess what? They all ended up in the back of the Panthers' net in Game 4 as the safety net that was Sergei Bobrovsky breaks into 1,000 little strands of string as he is pulled from the game after giving up 5 goals on 16 shots. He leaves in the second period. By the way, Arda, now when you look at the big picture, 7 goals against Bobrovsky in the last 3 periods of the series. So the Oilers would be feeling pretty good about that. I don't know. It's inexplicable. This is the biggest margin of victory for a team facing elimination since the 1918 Vancouver Millionaires, which was also 7 goals. And this came 1 goal away, Arda, from tying the all-time margin of victory in a Stanley Cup Final game that was set at 8 by the Pittsburgh Penguins over the Minnesota North Stars back in 1991.
Yes, and this is the largest margin of victory for a team down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Final. 7 in an 8-1 victory. To me, this is what happened. Stuart Skinner was awesome. He makes that save against Carter Verhagen. You're like, that's the Stuart Skinner we were waiting for. Connor McDavid wakes up, gets 4 points, including his first goal of the Cup Final. Sergei Bobrovsky goes to sleep, lets in a bunch of goals, gets pulled. In comes Anthony Stolarz. And the Edmonton Oilers convert on their chances, exactly like you said. They still got depth, point production, and scoring. 7 different goal scorers, 15 different point getters. Both of those are NHL records in a Stanley Cup Final game. So, to me, that was the recipe for success, or at least this ridiculous blowout that the Oilers were able to
pull off. The recipe for success is scoring 8 goals and chasing Bobrovsky. Yes, if they can repeat that 3 more times, the Edmonton Oilers will win the Stanley Cup. Look, I think this was a classic case of one team not being ready for the moment and another team having nothing to play for except trying to win 1 game. The Panthers, to a man, denied that having the cup in the building was on their minds. I'm sorry. They played pathetic tonight. They were a shell of themselves tonight. They were not ready for this moment tonight. They were not on their details. They were not playing as a 5-man unit. They were making mistakes all over the ice and then also not capitalizing on their opportunities. And the end result is they got their behinds handed to them by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the only question I have out of this game, Arda, because I do believe that it is going to benefit the Panthers to have lost this game, which let's speak on that now. So Alexander Barkov talked about after this game that you either win or you learn. I think it's a great line. And Paul Maurice, I think, said the same thing, so you know where Barkov got it. This is a great moment for them because maybe they had to figure out how to process this energy, how to deal with the energy, the expectation, the cup being in the building, everybody waiting to skate it in front of their family and friends. Like, you got to go through that. It's a unique feeling. None of these guys have felt it before. So that's important for them for Game 5. For the Oilers' perspective, though, the real question is this an anomaly? Is this a nice send-off for the fans? Is it a feel-good moment where all the players who are held in check all of a sudden hit the score sheet, where Skinner looks good, the power play scores? Is this just a great bookend to a great season for the home fans, and then you lose in a gentleman's sweep? Or is this the pivot point in a series where now all of a sudden the Oilers show up in a significant way? What say you?
After losing 3 straight games under Chris Knoblauch, the Edmonton Oilers have had the following records: 8-0-0 in November and December, 16-0-0 December, January, and 5-0-0 February and March. So if you believe history, they're winning 3 more games. But to me, honestly, Wish, my gut hockey fan feeling is that the Panthers win in overtime. I think the Oilers have momentum. I think they play a good game in Florida. They're going to have that confidence in themselves. But the Panthers, exactly to your point, will have learned from this game. They learned from the final last year, and they will refuse to lose that game in front of their home crowd and allow the Oilers to truly get into this series. Because if they win that game, it might well go 7, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're on the precipice of it. I tend to believe that this was catharsis for the Oilers, that it's a great moment for their fans. We'll talk about their fans in a little bit. Everything went right. I don't think everything is going to go right against the Panthers in the way that it went right. And I also think the Panthers are going to be a lot better. They needed to feel the sting of this loss. They're going to go home. They're going to be a lot more comfortable in front of their own fans. And again, I can't even conceive what that moment's like when you have rolled to a 3-0 lead. The anticipation is that you're going to win again, and then things don't go well, and then they just spiral. Moderately concerned about Bobrovsky, if I'm being honest. There were a couple. Matthew Tkachuk said 0 goals were on the goalies tonight, that it was the team in front of him. I do agree with that sentiment, that the team made mistakes the goalies couldn't clean up. That being said, Bob was human. Bob was human, and more human than he's been in a long time in these playoffs. And I do wonder, even from a psychological standpoint for the Oilers, if there's carryover now, because it's no longer, hey, we got to get bodies in front of this guy and take away his eyes, yada, yada, yada. It's, if we get a breakaway chance against this cat, we could score against him. That's a different kind of confidence for the Oilers.
Yeah, they did break through on that. That was one of the things I was thinking about in watching this game, and we'll rapid fire some of the players in a second, that this was one of those, let's break every single slump that exists. You know, Connor McDavid scores. They score a bunch of goals. Yeah, there's so many, talking points that were eliminated in this game for the Oilers. But I don't know, man.
Save for one, because although they did score on the power play, they're now 1 for 16 for the series. Paul Maurice told us that doesn't count. It was a 5-on-3, doesn't count. He literally said that. He said it doesn't count. I mean, he's trying to find silver linings. I suppose one is that they still have shut out the Oilers power play at 5-on-4. But yeah, that one doesn't count. But yeah, a laundry list of things that went right, like you said, for the Oilers.
Let's talk Darnell Nurse. He scores. He's been heavily criticized. He gets on the score sheet. A great moment for him. But what about the knee on knee?
I don't know. I was really surprised that they reduced it. I guess they didn't think it was egregious as maybe it looked. I don't know. I assumed that they would have given them the 5 if they thought it was warranted. And obviously Bennett comes back in the game only a few moments later. So I guess with no injury on the play, I'm fine with it, I suppose, as far as it being not a major. What do you say?
It looked a little worse. I think PK talked about this in the intermission. It did look a little worse than the knee on knee we saw in game 1.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised that it was a minor penalty or reduced to a minor penalty. But at the end of the day, we had the same conversation about these hits and the gravity of the game, and with the Stanley Cup on the line in that moment and the lack of injury. So maybe you overlook it in this case. But then again, I go back to the point of we want these hits reduced.
If you're talking suspension, don't even talk. There wasn't an injury on the play. We've already seen what the level is for potential suspension in the series. The Draisaitl Barkov hit. They're not even going to give that a second glance at player safety.
Maybe a major would have been warranted because it looked like a deliberate knee, but nevertheless, it was reduced to a minor. Conn Smythe. So it's Barkov as the favorite now. Bobrovsky, or actually no, is Bobrovsky still the favorite?
Barkov was the favorite briefly, and then everyone in the betting market realized that Bobrovsky's total had dropped, so they hopped on Bobrovsky again.
So let me ask you, does someone's, and I don't have this on hand, maybe it's happened in the past, and I just don't know this at the moment right now, but a goalie getting pulled in the Stanley Cup Final, how much does, in your opinion, that reduce their chance of being eligible for the Conn Smythe?
I mean, he's eligible. It's the sum total of the playoffs. It's just a matter of whether or not people put that on Bob or not. I mean, I think one of the reasons why not to get too granular about the betting markets or anything, but I think one of the reasons why we saw the odds change is because the Conn Smythe is essentially a narrative award, right? And the narrative is that Bob gets pulled in game 4, comes back, pitches a shutout, gives only up 1 goal or something in game 5. Well, now it's like the redemption arc, right? Now it's Bob stood up and won them the cup, and you can see that being the thing. The sense I get from being on the ground here, like we talked about last episode, there are a lot of people who think it should be Barkov. There are a lot of voters that believe that the sum total of the playoffs, his defense, his leading the team in points, all of that adds up to him being the Conn Smythe guy. There's also a lot of people that feel like it's Bobrovsky, and that the last line of defense that he was until this game means that he should win the award. Now, the wrinkle, Arda, is Connor McDavid. I have had a few conversations in the bowels of this arena with my colleagues. What if McDavid plays well enough to be the determining factor in a game 5 win for the Oilers, and it comes back here? Now, maybe it needs to get to a game 7 for this to happen, but when you think about McDavid having the night that he had, when we think about McDavid setting the NHL record for assists in a single postseason, we think about McDavid now being, I believe, 5th all-time in total points in a single postseason, and you think about the playoff that McDavid has had leading up to the final, and he has been their most productive player, I think, in the final. I think we're creeping closer to Jaguar Hextall territory. I think we are creeping closer to there is not a clear-cut MVP on the Panthers side because you can give it to a couple guys. And meanwhile, Connor McDavid is making history for the Oilers. How far does this series have to go for the conversation about McDavid winning the Conn Smythe in a losing effort to get serious?
He's already broken the record for most assists in a single postseason.
Correct.
That was held by Wayne Gretzky. He is currently 9 points away from the most points in a single postseason, which is also held by Wayne Gretzky in 84-85. If this series goes 7 games, actually, if this series goes 6 or 7 games, and if Connor McDavid ties or surpasses Wayne Gretzky's point total, I would, A, vote for him to be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, and B, I would lock him in as the Conn Smythe Trophy winner this year. I think that would warrant it, and that would, and also to your point about narratives, Sergei Bobrovsky getting pulled, recency bias, that certainly helps the case.
I think the conversation's going to grow about this because I really think that he's exerting his will in the series a little bit. If he has that in game 5, it's going to be a deafening conversation. I did have a text from somebody within the NHL who said, if McDavid wins the Conn Smythe in a losing effort, it is going to make his photo on the night the Oilers won the draft lottery look like him beaming and smiling. like he's going to be so glum if he wins the MVP in a losing effort. But I think we're getting close to it, man, with the impact that he's had on this series and the impact that he's had overall in the playoffs and the records that he's breaking.
The only player to ever win the Conn Smythe Trophy in a losing effort was Reggie Leach in 1976 with
Skater,
the Philadelphia Flyers.
Right, exactly, yeah.
The only player, all the rest of them have been goaltenders, most recently J.S. Jaguar in 2003. Let's talk about the... Whatever. The Devils won the cup, Wish, okay? Let me guess. Brodeur had, 3 shutouts?
I would have given it to Niedermayer. The interesting conversation about Jaguar in that playoff, and it might revisit it here, is like, should the final count more? It is an MVP award for the totality of the playoffs, but should we value the final round more than the previous 3? That was the argument against Jaguar. I wonder if it ends up being the argument against Bobrovsky if he continues to kind of struggle a little bit and they end up winning the cup.
There is absolutely no struggle among the Edmonton Oilers fans. Boy, are they showing up and showing out. What have you been seeing out in Edmonton, Wish?
I haven't been in Edmonton since McDavid's first home game as a rookie. That's the gap for me. Okay, so we're talking about major transformations of a city, new arenas, the whole bit. Like, I have not been here in a while. That is to say, I've not experienced an Edmonton home game here in Rogers' place, and I got to tell you, it's awesome. Like, First of all, they're a fan base that loves wearing jerseys, and I respect that. I think if you come to a game, it's okay. Let your freak flag fly, wear your jersey. These guys show up in jerseys. The people that aren't wearing jerseys at these games are cosplaying. Everybody has a gimmick. It's like the stormtrooper person, the rat exterminator is at game 4, the people that wear overalls, the people that wear construction helmets, the lady that I met out in the moss pit who paints herself silver and dresses up like the Stanley Cup, a lovely, lovely woman. You've obviously seen her on television a few times. I did not understand until coming here how incredibly into it these fans are insofar as like costuming. And it made me kind of jealous that I'm not an Oilers fan. It's really, really wonderful to be here and see how adventurous people get with what they wear to these games.
And they certainly honor their past, an illustrious past, a dynasty in their history. And look no further than PK actually posted a video of Mark Messier up on the Jumbotron and how he was received by the Edmonton audience. And you see PK like, bowing, we're not worthy. And the fans are going crazy. Like, what a scene. Yeah, Edmonton is absolutely a hockey town you love to see.
I'll give you one little inside bit here. So they have, when you see the Oilers come out, you see this door open, right, with their logo on it, and they come walking out. In the background, you can see the Stanley Cups they've won are on like a shelf near their dressing room. So if you see that on television, you see the cups behind them. They're walking out from the dressing room through the big logo door. The cups are sort of centered in the middle, so you can see them on television. But if you go in the room, it almost feels like they've left space for another one. And I don't know if that's like new or old or whatever, but I do love the idea of like we are honoring our past, but we still got another one to add to the trophy case. It's kind of cool.
That is a nice wrinkle, if in fact that was deliberate. And let's dive into that, Wish. We haven't seen a reverse sweep in the Stanley Cup Final since the 1940s, 1942. Hey, if you want to draw comparisons, it was a Canadian team that did it. Now the Edmonton Oilers are finding themselves in the same situation. They're down 3-1 in the series. Let's talk 3 reasons. Let's create the scenario, the improbable comeback. Game 7, the Oilers win the Stanley Cup. If that were to happen, as improbable as it seems statistically, historically, what are the 3 reasons why the Oilers can, C-A-N, can win the Stanley Cup?
Well, the first reason is that their stars might have woken up. And I asked Paul Maurice about this after the game, and he kind of downplayed it. He said he's not even going to give it a thought on Sunday that all of the players on Edmonton that were off the score sheet, Draisaitl, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, Bouchard, obviously Connor's been holding up his end of the bargain, are now on the score sheet. He's not worried. Maybe he should be. This is an Oilers team, like you said, that can get rolling. This is a group of incredibly talented offensive players that were, in some cases, snake bit, in some cases, goalied, but they all had an offensive explosion party tonight. Maybe this is an off and away we go moment for the Oilers offense and those star players, or maybe it was a one-game anomaly. It's going to be up to the Florida Panthers to prove that one way or the other.
I'll throw a reason to you. Connor McDavid, to that point.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid is, we've talked about this the whole series. He just hasn't been able to do it this series. He has the ability, the power, the talent, the wherewithal, the hockey IQ, the whatever you want to call it, to change a series on his own. 4 points in game number 4. If he continues to play like that, you give the Oilers a chance every single game.
That's true, but I will say that the thing that will happen in game 5 is that they will go back to Sunrise, and in Sunrise, they will get the last change. So they're going to be able to try to do against McDavid what they did in games 1 and 2. But at the end of the day, man, it's trying to put like a bottle cap on a volcano. It's like the thing is going to explode at some point. It's too powerful. It will melt the bottle cap. And that kind of feels like McDavid in this series. Like if he decides it's Connor time and he's going to do Connor things, that was always the great equalizer in this series. No matter how good the Panthers are, they are playing, all due respect to Greg Cote of the Le Batard Network, who called him Connor McOverrated or whatever the hell it was. they're going against a force of nature. They're going against the best player in the world and a player that is still getting his points, still making a mark despite going up against a very, very tough defensive team. Last one for me is the Panthers' pressure. I mean, like I said, they're saying the right things. You know, you either win or you learn. You know, Maurice called it something where they've never experienced 2 days of hype thinking about winning the cup, and now they can process that and move forward from it. But it doesn't get any easier. Like, you're still going to have the cup in the building in game 5. Oh, by the way, now your entire family is there, and your friends and your neighbors and your fans, and you want to put on a show for them. Oh, and by the way, the Oilers are back in the series. Like, they won and all their guys scored and they won 8-1 and they chased Bobrovsky. So it is not like the pressure is decreasing now for the Florida Panthers, despite doing, as Paul Maurice said, what they plan to do, which is to get a split in Edmonton. They're going home with a lot more on their minds and on their plates and on their shoulders than they had in the start of game 4.
Last thought before we end the show here. Isn't it interesting that after game 1, Wish, we said, yeah, the Oilers lost 3-0, but the pressure is on the Panthers because the Oilers played terrific. And now, facing a sweep, massive victory, we're sort of having a little bit of the same narrative here where we're saying, no, wait a second. The pressure might be on the Panthers here to close it out at home because the Oilers prove that they can get back into this series despite being down 3-1.
Well, we'll see what it looks like. One of the discussions we were having as we were waiting to go in the Panthers dressing room and talk to those guys was, is 8-1 erasable? Like, does it hurt less than 4-2? Does it hurt less than 2-1 in overtime? You know, like, it is kind of a weird game where the score got out of hand. These guys just started piling on the goals. And at some point, the Panthers are just conserving their energy for game 5. And their starting goalie gets yanked after 5. Like, it was a disastrous game for them. But is it disastrous to the point where they just write it off, burn the tape, move on, use it as learning process? Or is it disastrous in the way that lingers into game 5 for them? And I don't know the answer. They're saying the right things, but they got their mind handed to them tonight in a way that they hadn't in this postseason before, and in a way that the Oilers did to the Dallas Stars, and in a way that if things had gone differently for Bobrovsky in game 1, this game 1 could have looked like this in a lot of ways. Yeah. So I'm intrigued to see what the counterpunch is right now for the Panthers, because as much as I thought we're playing as good as them and we're controlling play, blah, 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 from the Oilers coming into this game was a bit of delusion and a little bit of pump up and a little bit of, hey, we're still in this thing. I mean, statistically, they weren't completely wrong. And now on top of that, you have this beautiful quote from Stuart Skinner the other day that I've been thinking about since he said it, and now it's even more valid. If anyone's going to do this, Arda, this being rally from a 3-0 deficit for the second time in NHL history, it could be the Oil.
It could be the Oil. Have you booked your flights to Fort Lauderdale yet, or are you waiting? Are you going to spend a day or two?
I have a flight booked. I booked all my travel during Game 6 of the Western Conference Final. I'm trying to move it up a little bit because I realized that the Oilers and Panthers are getting the hell out of Edmonton, so I'm hoping to get an earlier flight. I have that travel booked, but Arda, I have nothing beyond that booked. So let's see what happens in game 5. Honestly, dude, I'm really happy that there's a game 5. I saw our boss, Mark Gross, earlier. We're chatting about the series. We're both like, you know what? It'd be fun to have this thing go a little longer. You know, a sweep is emphatic, and a sweep is good, and a sweep decreases the amount of stress and strain on travel. But a sweep is not fun. A 5-game series is fun because now for the next couple of days, we've got some really interesting conversations to have about the series. And for the next couple of days, we have at least a scintilla of hope that we could be watching something very magical happening for the Edmonton Oilers in this series.
Yeah. And quite frankly, from a hockey fan narrative perspective, to see the Oilers somehow, some way claw back into this series would be magical hockey. So, hey, we're at the starting gate for that to possibly happen or unfold in front of our eyes. We will be with you.
One last thing.
Last thought.
We didn't say it. Shout out to Chris Knoblauch, man. Some lineup shuffling for him. Some good moves on his part. we got on him for pressing the wrong buttons in game 3, pressed a lot of the right buttons in game 4. First time doing this, man, behind the NHL bench, and I think that he did a really good job and contributed to this victory. But we'll see how it goes in game 5. We prediction time, Arda, real quick. You say it's done in 5?
I say the Panthers win in overtime, maybe double overtime.
Yeah, I think they close it out in 5-2. This whole thing tonight felt very much like storybook closing for the fans. A great moment for them. They can all leave happy, and then we all put on our tuxes for a gentleman's sweep.
And by the way, the Oilers,
in Florida.
Yeah, and they tied a bow with having Shania Twain give them high fives for the victory. So that ties the bow for the finals goodbye in Edmonton.
1-0 with Shania Twain in the house. I believe that means you'd have to come back for game 6.
That don't impress me much, I'll tell you that. All right, we're off the rails. We'll see you Tuesday after game 5, whether the cup is raised or not. Goodbye.
Let's go, girls.